Welcome to another episode of Book Rev with Bala on bodgepod.com. As always, I'm your host, Bala Ado, and on this channel, we give book authors the platform to come on the show and in their own words, tell us the message they intend to pass across through their book. Perhaps you're a book author, you want to come on the show, why not? Drop your message on the comment section and we'll get back to you shortly. On today's episode, we'll be reviewing the book, Lead Disruption, a Definite Guide for Exceptional Leadership in an Era of Uncertainty by Dr. Akinwumi Oke. Good day.
Thank you, Bala, for having me.
How are you?
I'm good.
Lead Disruption.
Yes.
What inspired you?
So lead disruption came out of my experiences during the COVID pandemic.
Okay.
As you know, I'm a leadership development expert. I also coach and work with leaders of organizations and teams. And during the COVID lockdown, it became challenging for leaders to engage with their teams because of the switch that we all went through.
From the norm.
Yes, from the norm. And so in my conversations that I hosted over a period of about 9 months, I had spoken with leaders from different parts of the world on how were they coping with the disruption that has happened to us in the world. And the fact that that disruption was just the beginning of a massive sea change in the reorganization of work as we know it. So that's the background to lead disruption. It contains the essential conversations distilled into actionable items that leaders can use in the era of disruption, which never ends, by the way.
Wow. In a world where change is constant and sometimes unpredictable, how does lead disruption offer insight or tools to help leaders navigate turbulent times effectively?
So in the book, I had written a number of chapters, 5 chapters essentially, that speak to the essential elements that leaders, or capabilities, I would say, that leaders must develop. The self-awareness, that's the very first chapter, because you can't give what you don't have.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah, true.
And providing stability in an era of disruption or uncertainty is probably one of the most important attributes or requirements for leadership in this era. The second chapter speaks to resilience. Leaders must recognize that they are not infallible. And they must be willing to be teachable and have the willingness to learn, relearn, and unlearn. And the third chapter, I think, speaks to communication. What kind of communication strategies do you need to adopt when things are not, operationally, for instance, straightforward? Leaders must be willing to engage at a level that offers the people you're leading or people you're working with or you're trying to influence an opportunity to bring you ideas that can help the organization to navigate uncertainty. And then I speak to empathy, because again, in this era where we no longer sit in offices where you're seeing a row of heads, most of the people now want to work remotely, they want to work at home. And so for leaders, recognizing that this requires a shift in how you lead, not necessarily rewarding people you see scurrying around and working, because now you have to lead from a distance. And I think the third, the final chapter is the one that speaks to innovation. How do you lead with an innovative mindset? A leader must have, so there's something called the growth mindset. How do leaders recognize that because of the nature of uncertainty we are dealing with, which I call structural uncertainty, and I borrowed that from Gary Amell, that says, in this era where the structures, traditional structures of work, of engagement, of society is changing rapidly, how do you navigate that successfully? So this book is just a guidebook that leaders can use to refresh everything you've learned in MBA school and all the rest. When the rubber meets the road, how does it really work? Yeah.
Okay. So lead disruptions seems to hint at a departure from conventional leadership paradigms. Could you tell us more about the disruptive concepts or strategies explored in your book?
So one thing that I was really keen to pass along is to amplify the conversation that was started by a gentleman called Nassim Taleb on the concept of anti-fragility. So traditionally, they will tell you, oh, you got to become more resilient, especially when things are not going well, there's uncertainty. But this gentleman in his book, titled the same way, Becoming Anti-Fragile, spoke to the fact that becoming resilient is not enough. Resilience is you expanding. There's a limit to your elasticity. And you don't want to break. You see, you hear today mental health, burnout, and all the rest. That's where I looked at this radical shift and I say becoming anti-fragile. And now anti-fragile systems are systems that are able to thrive in place of uncertainty. How do you do that? It is embracing the fact that uncertainty, the nature of uncertainty that we're dealing with is structural. It's not operational. It's not functional. And I'll give you an example. You and I are old enough to know that in this Nigeria, you move money around in bullion vans, right?
Exactly.
When we were, in our younger days, you hardly go through a city in a day without being run off the road by like 5 bullion vans moving money, right? But today, how many bullion vans do you see on the road?
It has reduced drastically.
Good. Does it mean that money is not moving?
No.
In fact, it's moving in quantums that are more than what your pickup Hiluxes can move. So that's the nature of structural uncertainty.
Okay. So now looking ahead, what trends do you foresee in the realm of disruption and leadership? And how can leaders program themselves and their organizations for the challenges and the opportunities ahead?
Okay, so there are a number of big issues facing leaders in the world today. And these are driven by a number of forces as well that are driving structural uncertainty. So we see today in the world a significant increase in the use and the changes in the logic of the use of violence. And when you see that, you find that creates opportunity where there was none before. Today, a lot of people are now relying on all of these delivery things, right? Because they don't want to go out, because they don't want to be caught in certain situations. How do you reorganize your business to respond to that? Leaders need to think about that. Also, leaders need to recognize that there are now multiple generations at work at the same time. Intergenerational leadership is a big deal. So for people like you and I, when somebody walks, one of your subordinates comes and say, you are gaslighting me. That was the latest one I had. You're wondering, call it what it is. This person is bullying you. But they have all kinds of funny nuances now that are coming into the place of work. And you really need to stay abreast of those as a leader. And when you think about how that impacts society as a whole, young people want to work flexibly. They want to do meaningful work.
Exactly.
And they want to create, and when you see the kind of opportunities that are happening now and they're creating, it's to circumvent all of the traditional barriers of society.
Definitely.
So you see them in the creative industries, you see them in the IT sector. It is their means of saying all of these barriers that society have placed on us, we want to cut off from them. And so as a leader and as a business person who's trying to create value, how do you then marry that to the expectations of the people you lead as well as the marketplace?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Akin. Your final thoughts, and then how can we get a copy of Lead Disruption?
So my final thoughts will be of course, go get copies of Lead Disruption.
How? Where?
At the moment, you can get from every outlet of Roving Heights bookstore. Okay. But also, Lead Disruption has its own website, leaddisruption.com. Okay. And you can also order from our website and it will be delivered to you. We're also on Amazon. The paperback will be on Amazon in the next quarter, the third quarter of the year. But at this moment, you can download e-copies on the Kindle versions and so on the ebook on Amazon.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you, Dr. Akin, once again.
You're welcome.
So please go and get a copy of Lead Disruption. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Don't forget to please like, comment, and subscribe, and kindly tune in to our next episode. Bye. Thank you. Thank you.